Welcome back to another episode. I'm Jake, and with me, as always, is Lukey.
Hey Jake, I'm well. Good to have you back on deck after a mini sort of winter break up in far north Queensland. How was it?
Yep, it was very good. I'm happy to be back, but I'm not happy that the weather is so cold now.
Yeah, I'm sure it was hard to leave those balmy temperatures up in Port Douglas, was it?
It was. It started raining on the last day that we left, so that was good because I wasn't missing too much. But yeah, it was good. That heat is good this time of year. I'd love to have a property up there, to spend a bit more time up there. It's hard to get the kids, to convince the kids. Myself and the wife tried to again, but we're not pulling them away from their friendship groups, and that's fair enough.
Sounds like that last day was easing you back into Victorian weather.
Yes. Now, a nice busy week. We are recording on a Tuesday morning. Overnight, we witnessed Richard Bland win his second senior major.
Some more Blandemonium and two on the trot now for Blandy. He's certainly got some rich form happening at the moment in the senior majors.
He certainly does. He come back from five back, didn't he? So he had a great final round. And for Jeter, it was a little bit shaky coming in, but yeah, when was it? So I think it was on KO, on our streaming service, about 9:30, 10 p.m. last night. I was in bed after watching a show. My wife had gone to sleep, and so I pulled out the phone and I was watching them come down the back. And I think I got to hole 14 or 15 before the second time my phone hit me in the head because I was falling asleep. So I had to turn off. But it was nice to wake up this morning and see that he got it done in that playoff.
Definitely, and you feel a little bit for Jeter having a five-shot lead evaporate. He had his chances though, and so we can talk about that in a bit more depth.
So the rest of the weekend, we had the Rocket Mortgage Classic, which was run by Cam Davis with Minwoo Lee in a T2 position as well. So it was a pretty good weekend for the Aussies. And on the DP World Tour, Marcel Siem won in a playoff over Tom McKibben. And on the LPGA Tour, we had a mixed team event, wasn't it?
Team event, that's right, with Titikul and Yin taking out the honours there.
Jump across to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. So Cam Davis became the only second or multiple winner of the event itself. Did you see much of that event?
I saw a bit of it in the final round, and we'd been talking in previous pods about there not being too much to write home about with the Aussies' form over on the PGA Tour. So it was great to see both him and Minwoo Lee in contention. Woozy had his chances to win there and was unable to hold on with a sloppy bogey on 18. He had a share of the lead after a chip-in. Dr. Chipinski made a couple of appearances in the final round for Minwoo, but great to see Cam Davis get the win. He's been drifting and a bit lost this season. His form hasn't been great, and we saw in the Masters he got a sniff of the lead and really shit the bed pretty quickly after poking his nose up on that leaderboard. So good to see him become the first two-time winner of the Rocket Mortgage. Great string to your bow there. And there's a bit of talk around about whether him seeing a hypnotist was the secret to unlocking the win on tour so far. Good to see Cam get the W.
Both of those two very hard to bet on or to follow because they are... They're either hot or cold, both of them really, aren't they? They don't generally perform on a really consistent basis.
Yeah, they can be streaky, and with someone of Davis's talent, look at his swing, he's got great distance, his temperament is exemplary. You really would expect him to have had more wins on tour. Doubling up here in Detroit, he clearly loves Detroit Golf Club, and a good one for the Aussies.
I followed Cam Davis around at the Sandbelt Classics. I followed him around Peninsula Kingswood. One thing I overheard him saying, because with that particular event, you can get in, there's no ropes, so you can follow and watch them from behind. Mm-hmm. He's allergic to grass. He said he was allergic. He said in particular Sandbelt grasses. So was there, I think he had to borrow some antihistamines from one of his competitive players there. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if that's something that has been discussed before, but yeah, he's allergic to grass as a golfer.
Talk about an occupational hazard, and maybe his move to the PGA Tour over in the US is a bit better than staying on Australian courses, but I'm sure it's more the money that's drawn him over there than the grass.
I'm going to say yes. I think you're right there. Now, Minwoo, good result, T2, or would he be disappointed in the fact that he bogeyed that last?
Definitely disappointed, and you could see that with the final hole bogey and also in his post-round interview. But I think he will be still pleased that he had a chance of winning and that he was at the pointy end of the leaderboard. Also good form going into the Scottish Open, which he's won before, along with the Open Championship. So trending in the right direction, and let's hope he can find that consistency that we want to see from him, because if he's able to drive that consistency, I think a top 10 player in the world, certainly on his day, he can beat anyone.
I think someone they can follow a little bit is someone like a Lucas Herbert, who has also had that sort of streakiness to his game. He seems to be like, it's a bit of a slow grind for him. He hasn't been amazing all year on lift, but he seems to be finding a bit more consistency. So hopefully those guys follow. Cam Davis is a little bit more surprising, given he's been on tour for a lot longer than even both of those two. But yeah, Minwoo is super exciting if he can find that consistency.
It's an interesting comparison to draw there with Herbie, and maybe there are some more similarities, similar attributes to the two there, but definitely excited to see Minwoo in the next few weeks driving for that consistency. Should see some pretty good results, I'd imagine.
Aaron Rai was another good finisher, so he was also T2. What stands out for viewers watching him really is the fact that he wears the two gloves. For me, he's been, I guess, outside of the States, we get to see a little bit more of these type of players because we watch a little bit of the DP World Tour. An interesting thing, I think, with him is that he's sponsored by Me My Golf, which the YouTube's first golf coaches. So that, I think that's quite interesting that we're starting to see YouTubers sponsor professional golfers.
It is an interesting development, but I just can't have Aaron Rai. I can't get on board. It's the two gloves, it's the slow play, it's the iron covers, all of it. I'm just out.
What about the driver off the deck?
Yes, I did like that. So credit where credit's due. The driver off the deck, I think, to reach the 14th, the par 5 14th in 2 was ballsy, and I did love that, but I can leave the rest of it.
I love it. I love the driver off the deck. I use it everywhere. Down here, we've got firm fairways, and generally, my miss is generally right. But with the driver, with the 3-wood, I should say, you can sometimes snap it both ways. The driver, it's either straight, or it's just leaking off to the right, or it's topped and it runs a mile anyway with these firm fairways we have down here.
Yeah, you got it. Got all the shots.
Cam Young. Now, is he ever going to win?
I'm shocked that he hasn't. I think he's probably more shocked than anyone else. It is crazy to think that he's not had a win on the PGA Tour. He's been so close to winning majors, but he hasn't been able to get it done in a regular tour event. He gets this sniff of victory, but he just doesn't seem to be able to close it out. At Rocket Mortgage, he faded in that final round, and you'd have to think that the self-doubt is certainly strong. He must be questioning, when am I going to win one of these things?
He's falling into that bucket, maybe not as elite as someone like a Pat Cantlay.
I think he's certainly got the game to be maybe better than Cantlay. He really has the shots. It's just a matter of putting it all together at the right time. I do think it's going to come. He's too good a talent not to get one, but it's amazing that he just hasn't got one so far, and another punch to the gut for Cam Young this week.
Certainly was. Bhatia continuing to be impressive in a really purple patch at the moment.
Are we concerned about Bhatia not closing it out this week and obviously last week at the Travellers? Is it something to be concerned about, do you think?
Personally not. He's so young. He's got the 2 wins already and he's putting himself into positions. It's probably just an experience gathering in terms of that is going to affect him. But it's just, I think, I'm just building on it, and he looks like he's learning.
I'm with you on that. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about with Akshay. In fact, I think there's lots to be excited about the form that he's shown so far this year. You can't win them all unless you're Scotty. And so I don't think there's anything concerning in any of that, and expect him to continue a good trajectory.
No, he was able to front the media as well after that devastating loss.
He was, and I noted that in the Shank Show newsletter this week, saying maybe Rory could take some cues and some notes from the young Akshay.
2.5 minutes in front of the media and away he goes. Rory didn't give that. There looked to be on X this morning, there's a few people, journalists in particular, that seem to be delivering barbs without actually mentioning McIlroy. Dan Rappaport, Do you think that's gutless by those guys?
If
I
you
think
say,
so.
if you're thinking it, say it.
I think so.
You wonder whether they've got some relationships there that they need to protect. They might not get the interview, or they might not get the inside scoop if they burn too hard or too overtly. But in some respects, it's almost worse, isn't it, by giving the subtext but not actually calling it out directly.
I think it's great to see that he fronted the media. And it is, I think this is a problem with the PGA Tour or majors in particular, because players aren't contracted. They don't have to get up in front of the media, which is where someone like McIlroy was able to get away with it. But that's an advantage, I think, of the live model, the contracted player model. And I'd love to see, as we're moving into or sort of reforming the PGA Tour and reshaping it, that they can introduce contracts, because the amount of money these guys are earning and the fact that it is an entertainment product, they should be fronting the media.
Even if you don't like it being termed an entertainment product, you have to accept that fan engagement is a way forward to drive more demand and then drive the commercial terms that the investors and sponsors and governing bodies all want to see. I think having them on stage, particularly in those, it's great drama, it's great theatre, and it drives engagement.
Let's jump across to the DP World Tour quickly. Wasn't much going on there except really maybe on the 18th. How close those grandstands were.
Backboarding scandal. I'm sure that the Shotgun Start hosts and Tron Carter from NLU will have been rightly outraged. But it is ridiculous to see a grandstand literally 1 foot off the back of the green, and then players who just blaze it into those grandstands getting free relief. It really brings the TIO rule back into question again, but also organisers. What are you thinking putting those grandstands so close? Maybe there's some challenges or restrictions that the course geographically had to be able to put those, but it just looked totally ridiculous.
It did. He dropped onto the green. Like, he was able to take a drop onto the fringe, but essentially he had the putter in hand. So it was essentially a putt. I think the way these guys need to do, if they're going to be putting in stands like this, I can understand that in certain situations they need to. It's hard for them to, it's not ideal because of the backboarding. For these drops at least, they need to implement or employ the RNA type of model, don't they? Where you've got a drop zone, and the drop zone is not somewhere you want to go by choice.
I think that's right. A drop zone that's got some penal nature to it is what we should be seeing, not being able to drop it on the green or thereabouts. There has to be some penalty for an errant shot, and when you're flying it into the grandstand on the full, that is deserving of a penalty.
It certainly is. Anything else from the Italian Open?
Not for me. A good win by Marcel Siem, and probably good form for him going into his home ground tournament this coming week.
It's good to watch Marcel Siem because he's so animated.
He's an entertainer, that's for sure.
I can't believe we're putting this much focus on the US Senior Open. The fact we're doing that is probably related to the LIV PGA Tour competition, really. For me, watching LIV and being able to root for those players is the reason I turned on the Senior Open. Like, I watched it purely to see how Blandy went.
Isn't that a lesson for the organisers and owners of these majors, that people who would not have been tuning in are tuning in because there's a rivalry now between PGA Tour and LIV and their supporter bases? It's visceral at times, that rivalry, and leaning into it and having more of these players be able to participate is a good recipe in my view.
From an Aussie perspective, Richard Green finished third. So he's in great form as well, because he finished second at the PGA, I believe, as well.
He did, and so he'll be really pleased with that result. The other Aussies were further down in terms of Hemsby and Appleby, Greg Chalmers, etc. Richard Green continuing his good form, and that's great to see.
He has that body shape or the physical attributes of someone who can play for a long time. It's very similar to Stricker. That tall, relatively lean. He's got a bit of muscle on him still. So you'd expect that he's probably going to be relatively, if not dominant, he's going to be competitive for quite some time still on that tour.
And that's probably half the battle in that seniors category, is if you can maintain your fitness and remain injury free, that's a really significant advantage. And if you've kept the weight off and kept relatively active outside of golf, it's probably standing you in good stead.
The US Open, the Senior Open, is going to some pretty good venues over the next few years. We've seen this a little bit with the women's side of the game as well. They're able to play courses a little bit smaller, like shorter in length, maybe some of the older sort of classical style courses. So that for me is the one interesting aspect moving forward, being able to see some of the best courses in the world, just because that we don't really get to see anymore with the professional sort of game, the distance they're hitting it and whatnot at the moment.
I think the USGA has been doing a really good job in its course rotations, and the US Senior Open is off to some great venues, and equally the US Open has got an absolute bottler set of courses locked in for the next 25 years. It's great for golf fans and great for the players too to be able to get to these awesome venues.
Yeah, Liv and Blandy, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. I think it's probably a good time to discuss it again. Should he be playing the Senior Open, which is coming up against the Liv UK event?
I feel like last time we said it was a good thing for Liv to lean into, and I think his win on the weekend only emphasises that point even more. I saw Andrew Kirby on X saying that if someone wins at Troon, that'll be 4 majors in a row. And then if that was Carnoustie as well, it's a great run for Liv players. But I don't think anything's changed in my view. What about you?
I went through a stage after we initially discussed it where I think I heard him say somewhere potentially that he was focusing on keeping his spot on Liv. I thought it was on the Flushing It podcast with him recently. So I went back this morning to see if I could get that snippet. He didn't actually say that. So I think he's fairly confident that he's going to be able to keep his position on Liv or reach that top 24 to lock up his guaranteed start next year. I think it's a win-win situation for everybody involved. He should be playing. It's going to produce a lot more promo for Liv, releasing him. For the RNA as well, you've got someone going for 3 majors on a trot. So I think that's beneficial for their coverage as well.
Lots of publicity around it. And my sort of sense on it is that much will come down to what Blandy wants to do. People might say that's a naive view and that there's contracts and they'll be enforced, etc. But I really get the sense that Liv and particularly Norman have this player-first approach, and they really treat the players like a big family. And maybe if Blandy's really hell-bent on playing the Senior Open Championship, Norman will permit it. But time will tell. I think it's a win situation, and let's hope we see it.
I think just on that, in terms of setting a precedent, this is quite easy. Just do what Tiger does. So all you have to do is create that slot for a senior dual major winner on a trot. It gets a release to play the 3rd major.
Just carve out a niche exemption that no one else will satisfy or qualify for, and away you go.
80 tour wins and gets you into the signature events.
For life.
Oh my God, it's just so crazy. Why can't they just come out and say, Tiger, we've got an exemption for Tiger and Tiger alone?
Everyone's calling it a Tiger exemption, so they might as well have lent into it as well.
Oh God, some of the funny things we see. All right, events this week. We have got the John Deere Classic at TPC Deere Run. It's an $8 million purse. Cam Davis is back there with Jason Day, Daniel Berger, Jordan Spieth, and Sepp Straka is the defending champion. Did I see also that Pat Cantlay pulled out this morning or yesterday?
I didn't catch that, but we are in a bit of a sleepy stretch of the PGA Tour and players resting up ahead of the travel over to UK for the Open and whatnot. I was surprised to see the strength of field, to be honest, at TPC Deer Run, and I think we should still have a decent event with those names, Davis, Day, Berger, Spieth, etc. Let's hope. I wasn't expecting too much out of the Rocket Mortgage, to be honest, and it ended up being a decent event, so let's hope for a repeat of that.
And the DP World Tour at the BMW International Open at the Munich Golf Club, $2.5 million purse. We've got Ryan Fox, Marcel Sims back there, Rasmus Højgaards, Matteo Manacero, Luke Donald. And then we've got the 3 live players, Thomas Peters, Pat Reed, and Martin Keimer.
maybe we'll see some decent rivalry coming down the stretch if some of the live players can make a fist of it. Keimer's obviously been in much better form so far this year. Peters and Reed on their days, they can be right up there as well. We'll see how Marcel Siem goes at the event coming off the win and be there in front of a home crowd in Germany.
These guys playing that may give us a little bit of hope for Blandy getting the exemption into the Open event.
Yeah.
Earlier in the week, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I was trying to show you some episodes from an old golf podcast that I had back in 2015 and 16. I thought I'd lost it all. I thought I'd deleted everything. So I showed you at least some of the guests we had on there. Then I went down a real rabbit hole and I worked out where I had them saved. So we're going to be remastering those a little bit and popping them on this particular feed. But looking at some of the episodes we had on there, it's pretty good. So we had people like Peter Finch, at the time had about 30,000 YouTube subscribers. He's now up to 500,000 or thereabouts. Someone like Jamie Sedlowski, who had come off a long drive championship in and around that area as well. So I think in all there's 23 episodes, mostly focused on game improvement. So I think they'll be interesting. It's worthwhile, even though they're 8 years old. There's some pretty good content in there still.
Looking forward to being able to release some of this content on the channel and on the pod. I think there was some really great stuff that you were able to uncover. Pretty successful treasure hunt for you during the week, and I'm glad you'd taken some time off to celebrate your 40th, which gave you a little bit of spare time to get into it.
I know. Now, look at a few of the other things from the week in golf. We had news there that Chambers Bay, was it the council or the area council or whatever it was, had said they were open to discussions from LIV. That would be exciting.
It would be exciting, and we've discussed previously some of the areas where LIV can make some improvements, and certainly course selection is one of those. If they were able to get Chambers Bay on their schedule for next year, I think that would be a massive coup for them.
I think that, to me, we spoke about the competing events coming up against the PGA Tour signature events in and around those majors as well. This would be, to me, the perfect event leading into the US Open or the week before the US Open. Being on the West Coast, it puts them into a different time zone, so it allows them to get out of PGA Tour's way a little bit and not directly compete. Courses is sensational. It's a real challenge for those guys. And it's different as well. So it allows them to play a different style of course. We don't even see that on LIV at the moment. There really isn't a course like that, really. So it'd be great to see them playing.
No, it would definitely be a very different event for LIV, where you're not seeing the standard round one, the leaders are at 6 or 7 under, and then you finish up circa 20 under, or maybe a bit less over the 3 rounds. But you're not going to see that at Chambers Bay, and that would be just a really good slice of variety to throw into the LIV schedule.
I went back and watched the 2015 US Open final round after hearing that news. My God, that was such a good event. There was so much action coming down that back nine.
There was, and I watched a little bit of it. It must have been on the dedicated Foxtel channel in the lead up to the US Open just gone, and I did watch some of it as well. And one of the things that it reminded me of was just how much of a baller Jason Day was in his peak, and the swing and the ball striking from him was incredible. He was probably unlucky not to win that one. And also, obviously, the DJ choke was another key moment there. But it just really did remind me of how awesome Jason Day was in full flight back in the day.
That was really probably the start of his run, that dominant period. So he come out and finished, I think it was 2nd or 3rd in the Open, which was, I think we had J Day and Spieth, I think, were paired together, and they both had a chance to match Zach Johnson on the 18th. They hit up to the front of the green on the old course there, and both had putts or a chip to try and force a playoff. So that was Spieth's 3rd major on a run he was going for there, very much like Richard Bland.
While we're on the topic of J Day, I see reports that he's looking at coming back to Australia at the end of the year. I was shocked to read that his kids have never seen Australia, which just mind-boggling to me. But he wants to take them back to his roots, back to Beaudesert, which is not far from where I am in Brisbane here. It's about 45 minutes out of Brisbane. And he played a lot of his golf at Coralbin and also the Hills. Look, I hope we see Jason back. And if we do see him back, I really hope that he plays the Australian PGA and the Australian Open, if there is to be one.
If there is to be one. I was very surprised with that as well, because his son, his oldest, is close to 13 or 14 or something.
That's right.
Gosh, that's crazy. It's crazy. And Aussie doesn't, I don't know. I can understand his wife is over there, but just not to come back really with the family.
Do you think he feels any sense of obligation, having been picked for Australia at the Olympics, to maybe make a token return?
If he felt any sense of obligation, he would have been back way before now.
Yeah, I just wondered whether maybe being in an Olympic year, it may have changed his thought process. I remember back to one of the other Olympics where he withdrew because there was Zika virus. I think it was Brazil. And there was Zika virus. And so that was his excuse for withdrawing. But now representing his country is a very fine honour.
Listen, there's probably a higher likelihood that he's had a falling out with Tiger. And so he's not going down to the Bahamas.
He's not going to the Hero.
Oh, goodness. We had the presidential debate, Biden and Trump. That the most animated we saw Trump was just when Biden said he was an 8 handicapper or a 7 handicapper.
Seriously, have either of these guys got those handicaps? Not a chance, right? This is the whole Vanity handicap in full flight, in my view. I
think it's hard to look. We've got the global handicapping system, but just the different way we play golf. I think from my understanding in the States, there's a lot of skimmies, and that's just how they play. So you miss those sort of those 3-4 footers or even shorter putts here, where the majority of handicap rounds in Australia in particular, under sort of tournament conditions or competition, your score is based on getting it in the actual hole. And I think a lot of this would be missed really if they weren't given. So I think there's just a built-in sort of vanity aspect in the States in particular. Yeah, but they're crazy. Some of Biden's scores were from 5-10 years ago.
That's right. And then the fact that he's saying, I'll take you on in a long drive contest any day. Or I said I'll play golf with you so long as you carried your own bag.
Trump's swing, it's not pretty, but pretty effective. He's got a lot of power still for someone who's 78.
If you told me he can scratch it round the course, his home course, around about 10, I'd have no problem believing that. But what is he, 3 or something like that? There's just no way he's playing to 3 on a consistent basis, in my view.
He won 2 club championships this year.
I did hear him say that, and not even the senior ones. It was the proper ones.
I think if you look into it, I think he'll tell you he's won about 27 or something like that.
The stories of him being a cheat are pretty prolific, aren't they?
They certainly are.
I'd still back him in a long drive contest over Sleepy Joe.
Yeah. Mark Darbon. Is it Darbon?
I think that's right.
Mm-hmm. There's been appointed the chief executive of the RNA. So he's 45 years old and he was the CEO of the Premiership Rugby's Northampton Saints.
So breaking news just out this morning, no real comment on that either way. I don't know whether that'll be a good appointment or a bad appointment. Probably bringing someone in laterally outside of golf, given the current state of affairs, is probably not a bad thing to have some lateral thinking. That's what we've been calling for from these organisations, and to break free of the groupthink and the echo chambers that we've seen. So hopefully it's a good appointment. He can bring a bit of youth and a bit of forward thinking to the RNA and maybe really a refreshed approach to things.
Nelly Korda was due to play in a lead event but was bitten by a dog.
Announced on Instagram via a statement that she'd been bitten from a dog. She had to pull out of an event at Centurion and that she needed some time to recover, which were then swiftly followed by posts of her on the beach and doing various other fun activities. Not sure where the dog bite was, but didn't seem visible in the beach shots.
Are you saying this is a bit like the dog ate the homework situation?
I'm not saying anything, but that's a good joke. That'll do us this week. Thanks for everybody for listening along, and we look forward to being back next week. We'll cover off all things golf.
I think it'll be another uneventful week because we've got a month or two coming up afterwards. This is really it after this week.
That's right. We've got majors. We've got Liv coming back into the fold. Scottish Open's always a good one. So a good stanza ahead for golf. Lots for us to talk about.
We will catch you again next week.